it is the hardest thing, I think, to do, because there's no ladder. There's no X, Y, and Z steps that you need to do to be able to do this. You can go to school. You can also not go to school and find success in this industry. It is extremely subjective, and it's really, as I'm sure a lot of industries are as well, but mostly this one, it's about who you know. It's literally who you know. Every audition I go out for, every like big show that I've read for, it's because my agents know the casting office. Anything, the Summer of Violence, the show that the film that I booked, my manager, he knew the writer director. I mean, I don't want to say that's why my audition was good, but he knew the writer director.
Today, we're talking to Madhulika. She's a budding actress who grew up in Silicon Valley. Formerly trained in theater at USC, she's lived in LA for years and has been a part of the relief efforts going on with fires still burning across Southern California. We had a fascinating conversation with her, and we're excited to dive in.
Well, you know how this goes more than we do.
Have you done any podcasts before? Or?
I actually haven't done a lot of podcasts. I've done a lot of interviews. I've done a lot of like online Q&As, usually about a movie or show or whatever I'm working on. But I'm always on Zoom calls. I'm always on auditions on Zoom. It's the new way to do things, which I don't personally love. I feel like I'm very an in-person person. I'm sure you guys already know that too.
Yeah, wait, they can do like castings on Zoom and feel confident about the people they cast?
I've done chemistry reads on Zoom. I've done like really like intimate, dark, crazy stuff over Zoom. And it's not the same.
Wait, why'd they stop the in-person stuff?
So it depends. Like sometimes, if they're reading actors that are one's in LA, one's in New York, what are they going to do? And before you cast them, you want to just kind of see how they work together. I guess it's like the easiest and most efficient way, but it's not, there's so much more you can do in the room in person as you can imagine.
Was that prevalent before COVID? Like, was it?
No, COVID is really what changed the game. I'm sure that existed before a little bit. I know I was doing a lot of self-tapes even before COVID, but it was really after COVID that everything kind of shifted on. Like I haven't gone in person for an audition. Sometimes commercially they'll have you come in person. Commercials are more of just a personality test, so to speak. So it's just kind of seeing if you fit that. So anyone, even people who aren't actors, can do commercials. So commercials, I'd say, is definitely they still have you come in the room, but everything else is virtual. First, second round, usually third round, or like a producer session or a chemistry read or a screen test. They'll bring you in.
So like I could go in and audition for a commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. You just need some headshots, some different looks, like a little more suited up business, a little more casual, maybe a sporty look, whatever your vibe is.
Arv, give us a sporty look, Arv.
This is just like flip the collar up. That's it. There you go.
Honestly, this is like a lot of they want like average everyday people that don't try too hard or look like something glamour. Like they don't actually, like, the worse you look, the better it is for commercials, from my experience.
Viv, she's telling us we're perfect for it, actually.
Arv, let's see your I need some Pepto-Bismol look. Let's see what that is.
Perfect. Sometimes that's the extent of my call is just
they're like, you're off. Get out of here.
Your name, make the face, and leave.
No, for Madhulika, we know that they're like, oh yeah, that's the one.
Not always.
What kind of stuff do you like to go out for? Like, what are you auditioning for now?
So I'm 30 years old, but I read for like 18 still. So I still like look young, I guess. So I still, I do a lot of teen and college. Like that's usually what I get auditions for, what my agents submit me. My agents submit me for everything. Say my age range is like 18 to 30, but Usually I play a lot of villains, not by choice. That's just something that just happens. It just has been what's happened a lot for me in my experience so far. Um, or just kind of like the sidekick, best friend, comic relief. The last movie that I shot, Summer of Violence, I was kind of I was like the lesbian best friend, like a little edgy, kind of just pushing the lead girl to do things that she wouldn't normally do, like pushing her outside of her comfort zone and things like that. So I guess that's kind of what I gravitate towards. Not necessarily saying that I'm like that all the time. Maybe sometimes, maybe a lot, but not. But I feel like I could do a reclusive, shy, introverted kind of role, but I
Like
haven't.
your own revenant,
Yeah.
like
Revenant? No, isn't that the
Or
one where isn't that the bear fight one?
yeah,
That's
I'm also I kind of would love to do like a in terms of roles that I would want to play versus what I've had played. I would definitely love to do something like physically daunting, and it kind of takes you out of your own body physically, like even just like playing an addict. I want to like experience just how your mental trauma affects you physically a little more.
How would you like imagine you did have a role like that? Like, how would you prepare for? How would you do it?
So I would initially just do as much research as I can. I try to talk to people who've experienced something like that. In the context of the story, though, you do, like, depending on the writing and what it is and what the story is. If it's a good script that you're working with and it's inspired, the person who wrote it has their own life inspiration. You already get so much right off the bat from them, and like getting and just learning more about them and starting to work with them. But I would just kind of start with just facts, and doing my research and how most people are affected by whatever they're consuming and how that addiction manifests itself within you. And then I try to find ways to like things about my personality that I know, or things about my habits that I know, how that would maybe manifest itself within me. If who I am and like what I do fit in with the story too. Like, it depends also on the context of the story. Like, this character could be someone so opposite from me, could have grown up in a completely different world with different parents and different, so all of those things come into play. But a lot of times as an actor, like, I feel like the most successful actors are focused on the moment, what's happening in the moment. You're not too in your head about where you are and who you came from and selling that and all of that. So it's more just like being focused on really it's just how we are in life, like how we are in this specific moment is what we're thinking about, and how that is affecting us, who we're talking to, or who we're in the scene with, or what's
did it
happening in the scene.
did it take you like a crazy amount of time and practice to be able to enter the moment while acting? And because like when we started doing this podcast, I was noticing that we can be very self-aware that we're recording the podcast, and that
Yeah.
changes what we're saying, or how the flow might go in the podcast. Where is
Yeah.
that the same thing in acting, where you have to get over that hump?
Yes, it's a little easier, I think, when you're in a scene. You get this world to play with and this role and character to play with, to get lost in. And so all of that other stuff, like right now, we're just so aware of like us being who we are, having a conversation, rather than like if we were all just like getting happy hour later and nothing was being like, it's like, it's like still a part of ourselves. Whereas this is kind of, this is something that even outside of being recorded, or like, if I'm stepping in on set or even in a rehearsal, it's still, you're leaving yourself to go to this place. So that stays consistent a little more than something like this would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's something that you already kind of know that you're jumping in. But for me, I would say it was really tough for me to go from doing theater to doing film. Like, it definitely took me, I've been doing theater my whole life. It's a totally different game. One of my old acting teachers would always say it's the listener is closer in film and TV versus type of audience. So it's not even, that's how you kind of have to think about it. It's not like, a lot of people just think like, oh, like you just act smaller, like you're acting bigger, you're louder on stage. But it's, when it comes to just portraying a character and like, and the message that you're sending, just to think that you're just, the listener is closer. You don't have to like that.
What does that mean? Like, don't overact? Is
Yeah,
that what that's?
it just means you're not trying to reach people that are so far away from you, whether that means like in a literal sense or even in just a figurative emotional sense. Like you're right here in the room in these in you know, like let's say whatever the scene calls for, and you're talking to someone right in front of you. That's it. That's all you have to talk about.
What's been your like learning journey to get here? Can you tell us a little about, like, so you start in theater, and then did you realize at some point, like, I really want to go into film, movies? Like, how was the transition?
How did it all start? What's the origin story?
So I mean, doing theater in high school is when I really realized that this is what I have to do. And the only thing that I really want to do and what makes me happy. So when it came to like applying to schools and going to college, that was already at the forefront of my mind. Most universities, I know things have changed since I've been in college, but it's a theater program. It's a 4-year theater program. It's just kind of what fits into that curriculum. It's also important. I think I understand over the years now that having that theater kind of that education and that base in theater can allow you to do anything else. There's just so much to learn about yourself and your body and your perspective and kind of who you are through theater, I think. And just also just studying how the stage works, I think will make it easier to do film. I think it's easier for someone to do theater and then film than it is for someone to start in film and then move to theater. So I kind of understood why that was. I always felt like the stories that I wanted to tell, I kind of just want to diversify Indian Americans and people of color and glamorize them in the industry. I think we're lacking that. I think growing up, we would just see a lot of stereotypes and really redundant. And like being from the Bay Area too, I was like, this is not how my life was. Like it was so liberal where I grew up. It was so diverse. Like even in my Catholic private high school, people would see me as not like the Indian girl. They'd just be like, oh, Madhulika, like, you know, I was just another girl. Like it was just, people didn't see that. And I felt going to LA, I felt like I was like, whoa, this is conservative. Like this, which is saying a lot. This is going into political, not trying to be political about this, but it was just something that I always like discovered as I moved away from the Bay Area and as I went to school at USC for theater. I realized that there was so much more to tell about us, and there was so much not that the whole world like just didn't know or didn't see that was possible, like the potential of people, minorities that are not represented correctly on screen. So that really motivated and still motivates my whole journey. Theater was always gonna kind of be a base for me, something that I will always come back to. But I think the reach that I want to have and like the amount, the type of stories I want to tell and the people that I want to reach, film and TV is just the scale for it. You can't really do that with theater.
And what was your break-in? Like, what was one of the first things you did in film or movies where you got a sense like, okay, this is actually possible?
So honestly, the climate changing a lot was huge. I feel like things, even in my last maybe like 8 to 10 years of which is like the extent of how long I've been doing it, even just seeing specifically with like Mindy Kaling, I mean, just seeing what she's able to accomplish. She's doing something a little different from what I want to do. Like she kind of takes, I think, stereotypes and like normalizes them a little bit or makes them a little more than what you think they are. I kind of want to completely just not do the opposite of what they are and something like just undone and unpredictable. But I think I was just already starting to see it in the industry, which was helpful. And then I started, I guess, this YouTube show that I did with Darman for so long. I mean, he would always cast me as a really non-traditional, like for an Indian POC, like it was a role that was like I would always play like the popular girl or the girl that was it was just not stereotypical whatsoever to see me in that kind of a role. So I think that's when I realized, like, okay, this is happening already, and this is possible. And I just have doing that on a larger scale with even meatier roles and stories. I think, like, you know, seeing, like, again with the addict thing, I've been talking about this with some writers recently, so it's like fresh in my head, but just like seeing an Indian girl like on the streets shooting up heroin, like, no one, that's not saying that that's the message I want to send, obviously, but just seeing that anyone can be in any situation depending on how they've lived and how they, like, it's not just getting away from the stereotypes, good and bad.
So we recently interviewed Sri Shruti Ramesh, who runs Brown Girl Bookshelf, and Mindy Kaling came up in that context too, because I guess Mindy Kaling had written a book or something and they reviewed it. Mm-hmm. She seems to be someone for Indian women in the arts broadly, like an inspirational figure. Like, and as an Indian male, like, she hasn't been in the forefront in my mind as much, but I think for all the women, like my wife Sri Ranjani, she's watched all of her stuff, like all the way from, you know, Mindy Project to Never Have I Ever, and, you know, The Sex Life of College Girls is coming up, I think, more often.
I read for all those shows too, which is
really? Okay.
Yeah, and like some of the other guest star in, like, I'll always read for her. I don't think personally, like, I see the casting choices and I see why. I think that I bring a different version of what that role kind of, like, I'm a little bit not like, my comedy is a little different, or I'm stereotypical in like a different way, or not stereotypical, and I hate using that word, but anyway, I'm same. Continue. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, I just wanted to, I'm the same way. I've followed her through from the beginning, I guess.
She's a really inspirational figure in the lives of young brown women, basically.
She's the first one, I think, that has been able to go so far and do so much going so far in the context of like representation of first generation Americans. I haven't really seen that I haven't seen any other Indian man or woman. Well, some actors, some male Indian actors have definitely accomplished that, but I haven't seen like creators, writers, producers, directors really take that journey authentically and follow that Indian American, first generation American trajectory, I guess, in the way that
and a lot of her stuff is like speaks directly to that second generation experience, right? We're born here, right, brought up here, but we're Indian. So
yeah, I feel like Never Have I Ever as a show was one of the first ones that I've seen also that portrays the high school experience in a very like non-stereo. It just felt like kind of normal. Like, this person happens to be Indian. You know, there were some stereotypes in the family. Yeah. That, you know, even you know, my mom was like, the way they portray God, for example, is often very flippant and very stereotypical, and it just didn't resonate with her at all. Yeah. And so there's some things that I think are also generational, like, or maybe written more for a multicultural audience, that then when we watch, we as Indians raised here, or at least our parents' generation coming from India, they're like, oh, wow, that doesn't hit me at all. So it's hard to hit every audience also. Right. Yeah.
Because when you're also telling a really subjective kind of story, you can't be that objective. Like, you got to get specific to make it realistic and to tell that story. Like, not all South Indian Tamil families are going to look like that. I think they did a good job though of being that California, LA kind of version of what that is. I personally like that she made it not a little bit more accessible. Like, there was Tamil in it, but it wasn't like, so it wouldn't like, it was still something that people, especially young people. The other thing is that show is for young teens, and it's
really like, damn, I got really into it.
It's for, well, no. It's definitely for all of us, but it's just like that's the other thing. And the culture aside, is just when when a show or a movie, especially like romances and things that are PG-13, like the audience is so huge, so you can't really you're trying to draw people in who are maybe 12, 13, 14, and also people that are like 25 to 30, maybe some 50-year-olds. So it's when it's so broad like that, it's hard to get you have to kind of generalize a little bit for your audience and not make it too difficult for one of them. So that makes it a little more tough. But I thought she did a really good job of this suburban in Tamilian Indian family in LA.
What has your experience been, just like, what's it like? I mean, one of the reasons we started this podcast in many ways is to really reconnect with people who we know, who've been in our lives, but we haven't talked to in a long time and are doing really interesting and fun things. So
Yeah.
that's why you came to mind almost immediately.
Yeah.
And just like for people out there listening, I mean, think of our audience as like skewing probably pretty tech forward, like maybe from the Bay Area, like, imagine you're at a house party in San Jose or wherever, and someone asked you like, what's it like? Like it just like, it seems so distant from us in some ways, that experience. So yeah, tell us a little bit about like, what's it like just like living in LA, and we'll get into the probably the most important thing today in LA, which is about the fires and the relief efforts you've been a part of. But what just like, you land there, you'd go to school there. What's it like?
So a lot of people are right when and parents maybe, like, so to speak, that try to push their kids away from this. It is the hardest thing, I think, to do, because there's no ladder. There's no X, Y, and Z steps that you need to do to be able to do this. You can go to school. You can also not go to school and find success in the industry. It is extremely subjective. And it's really, as I'm sure a lot of industries are as well, but mostly this one, it's about who you know. It's literally who you know. Every audition I go out for, every like big show that I've read for, it's because my agents know the casting office. Anything, the Summer of Violence, the show the film that I booked, my manager, he knew the writer director. I mean, I don't want to say that's why my audition was good, but he knew the writer director. Like that's at the end of the day, if you just kind of look at how there's obviously that one person that just happened to have that circumstance that just walked in the room, was exactly what they were looking for. And that usually happens when they're also like trying to cast something super specific and they want an unknown, let's say, and really, but again, that's an example of just how subjective the experience is. So it's really a numbers game. It's really just, the more you play the game, the higher your chances are. The more you audition, the more you network, the more you work, the more you're just present in this world, the higher it's purely like a numbers thing. It has nothing necessarily to do with talent, and it has nothing to do with, again, like your background or education or any of that. Obviously it's a lot harder for people of color. It's like Hollywood is very white. It still is extremely white. Even though, they're trying to put out this idea of like, oh, like, look at how diverse it's getting, whatever. I even touched on that a little bit earlier. I'm also just in those networks where it's getting more like there's the whole South Asian community in LA of people in the industry, and like we have and social media and like technology is also has been a great tool over the last 10 years, which is why I think representation has even gotten to where it is, because of technology and because there's all these other outlets and ways to shoot and make your own thing. And the whole independent world is something that I'm really passionate about. So I try to focus my energy on that, and all this network streaming Hollywood kind of stuff. I like my agents and my managers will work with me and like that's climb that kind of ladder there. But it's really, really tough. And you just gotta have grit, and you have to like really want to do this, and you have to want to do it so bad that you're basically sacrificing every single other thing in your life. So it's just a matter of committing to that and staying positive. And The thing with LA though is that it's a city of artists. Everyone here is hustling. Everyone here is working. When you find your people, when you find other people who want to tell similar stories to you, or other people that you connect with artistically, it's just kind of, I think nowadays, especially since COVID, been this push for creating your own kind of work. And I think that's what truly finds, that's what actually I think makes people the happiest. It doesn't need to be this like big budget, like industry project. That's like not what success is anymore. Cause like a lot of times even doing that, like sure, you gain success, you become this A-list actor, you make a lot of money, like your career is made, so to speak. But a lot of times, like, they're not telling the right stories or sending the right message. They're doing whatever benefits them. It's again just like that money making thing. And I'm kind of like at that, like that's not why I'm here and why I want to do this. Like if I end up doing something that is huge, like that's going to be great, whatever. But I think the happiest I am and the way that I feel that I'm really successful is from doing the projects that are sending this larger message or telling this really intimate story in this authentic way that doesn't have any other interference from someone trying to just make money off of it or sell it or have these other other factors that go into making it a successful product. Like,
yeah, it's really like a very Buddhist, almost like a Zen mentality, which is like, don't act for the fruits of your labor, but act because you just purely want to do the thing you're doing.
Totally.
What I have a more like specific question about how people of color can break into Hollywood, because to me it almost seems very systemically set up against people of color, but not in a way that's really nefarious, but more in a way where like history has been historically white.
Yeah.
A lot of movies are based in both history and the culture and reflecting the culture of either the period they're filmed in or even today. Even today, the culture is majority white. So it's almost incumbent upon a lot of studios to tell stories that are cast in a majority white way. And then those stories that are cast with people of color tend to be focused on people of color. Like this is a story made for people of color. It feels really like binary that way. Like Never Have I Ever is one of those stories where I think it's kind of unique in that it was cast in a very general way. And I think they could have cast people of any ethnicities or colors for the general cast, but the family was Indian. So how do you think about, like in your community there, how do you think about building out a Hollywood that's more, hey, I just have a position open. It's sort of open to anyone. They don't need to be any color. Is that mean the stories have to be more generic, or does that mean the audience has to be trained to accept more racial diversity in situations where they might expect a different outcome?
So in terms of audience expectations, there's no such thing. It's the stories that we want to tell. Like people will get it. If you get it, they'll get it. Like if you're telling the story about this person and their background isn't relevant, and so you don't have any, like, that doesn't matter for the story and for what you're trying to tell or what message you're trying to send with whatever that story or that film or that, but then it doesn't matter. Like then the audience will buy into it, kind of thing. So I just definitely, we just need more of that non kind of stereotypical diversity, and there's just less of that. And so just having more of that. And the problem and the reason that, again, that we don't have more of that is because a lot of these execs, a lot of these producers, and a lot of writers and directors are primarily white males. So we just need more diversity in other areas within the industry to allow that to happen more. And
like I'm sorry.
No, continue.
I was going to say, you were mentioning earlier that, you were working with writers on a project for this addiction, on this addiction work. Is that a set of writers that's, thinking the same way as you about building characters that are just kind of built as the character? It doesn't matter who they are, what they're about, and that's kind of helping to craft this other side of the industry.
100%. Yeah, so okay. This one friend of mine that he's a writer, and he currently he has a lot of access to a lot of really great camera tech that he has to it. So he's like, let's like write stuff, let's like make stuff. Like what are some stories you want to tell? Like we're just like sitting down talking about it. And so he's fully like just trying to understand my whole perspective and like who I am as an artist and what kind of stories I want to tell. And, you know, we're like brainstorming and like back and forth. But it's also like he's going to bring his own passion and his own perspective into it and his own experiences, whether it's for a specific role for me or any of these other roles or the overall story. And so it becomes this like kind of collaboration of those two things. But it's different from someone who is just completely writing based on like one kind of understanding or perspective for one. It's better when there's like a collaboration of artists, I guess, because that just automatically brings more diversity and perspective into the project rather than like someone kind of taking control of every character or personality or situation or story that's happening or that they're trying to tell. And it's also like that's also just kind of vague. Like it's hard to say like who or what is responsible for that kind of thing happening. Sometimes it just happens, like people just accept it and it's just a matter of like a budget situation or time constraints or, you know, what the network is like. I know like a lot of these like some of the networks, some of the problems with the diversity thing is just that they just have, in order to create this show or this movie, or they just need a plug in. But like, let's just plug in like people of color, like what, and sometimes it's like gets to becoming really stereotypical depending on who's in that writer's room or who's working on it, or it's that person who's like that token Asian guy or whatever is just doesn't, there's nothing explained. They just needed to plug in a person of color, like a minority into this role. And then you see, and it actually ends up working. It's like, oh, cool. We didn't have to go into like him being Asian or examine it, but it's just something that they're, so it really depends.
Do you feel like the last, like, I think there's generally during COVID and like after, you know, Black Lives Matter and, you know, there's been a lot more visibility and to how undiverse different industries are.
Mm-hmm.
Did that change Hollywood at all in your estimation?
No, like I don't think so. I think they're everyone's aware of it now. A lot of stuff came out that people like weren't aware of. So it's definitely something like in the forefront of people's minds, but it's people, like there's so many people who want to do this, and the people that have the power to do it are still able to get away with and exploit people. There's still like so there hasn't really been any effective change in that way. They on paper maybe, but not really. Like people, there's so many things that happen like behind the scenes that, like, even, I mean, just last week or 2 weeks ago, I was like, I follow this page that goes into like the crew, people on set, like who are in the crew. It's like their Instagram is called Crew Stories. And I'm just like reading about how like these fires are happening. Their houses are burning down, but they're being threatened. Like basically you're replaceable. Like if you don't show up to the shoot today, like we'll replace you. Like we don't, like
Oh my God.
people just blatantly don't care that,
and it's like then, it's like in the same neighborhoods, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I had a friend who's an actor who he was called in. He was like doing an episode on Ryan Murphy and Kim Kardashian's show, whatever the show that they're working on is. And he had to and they basically got a message like, oh, like talent wants to keep going, so we're gonna keep going, like we don't really care, like, you know. And it's like when you're on a high profile set like that and you kind of bail on something like that, even if it's for good reason, like you get blacklisted. Like it can be culty, and it can be like really just cutthroat in that way. So it's like there's still so many things that, and that's like a big budget, you know, that's like not something, that's not like a small project that a bunch of like creatives are just like pulling it. Like that's like a bit like there should be protections put in place. That's a whole other reason though too why the strikes happened last year, and how almost like every component of the industry is like is facing some kind of like they're not protected. They're just not protected enough, and it's so easy in the world of art like this to like be exploited.
Yeah, did you feel like those strikes resulted in meaningful changes, especially now that we think about how AI is coming into, like, how are you, I see your reaction even, like,
Yeah,
how are you thinking about that? Yeah.
it's not like it wasn't a success. We didn't put our foot down though, and that's also what kind of sucked. The strikes lasted so long, longer than we wanted to, and the backlash of that I felt even last year. I read for a Hulu pilot in December, and Hulu had picked it up in 2022, and it was in pre-production only now. Like you can just see how like that really affects.
Mm.
But we got these temporary contracts which were like good enough. So currently, they can't, they were just ready to basically say that anyone who wanted to, like, they could just take, like, sell anyone's image. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was so bad initially. And I think we got some pushback on that, which is huge. But the fact that it took so long to get that, and the fact that we barely even got kind of what we were asking for, and we had to like really meet them halfway. I'm starting to gravitate more towards the independent world, that's filled with artists who really just want to tell authentic stories and who are willing to like respect. A24 is probably a really recognizable example of that. Like they're all about supporting their actors and the artists that they'll do
Is
whatever.
that a guild, A24?
It's a production company. And this past year we had some the animation. I mean, the strikes kept going on. There were crew strikes, so like from the production side and their union, there were strikes last year. So it like was this ongoing, like everyone was kind of like, okay, we got to jump on this when we can, and while this is happening, otherwise like it's just so easy to get exploited.
Yeah, because there's this really scary thing. I mean, at the Olympics, they had Al Michaels doing AI based recaps of all the Olympic events. Like nobody was really commenting. They would just put the events on, and they had the Al Michaels AI generating the feedback kind of thing. And I was like, that's fine, but think about all the young commentators who want to break into this industry who you just robbed of doing 30-second, 2-minute recaps.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could just see that happening again in acting, where it's like the established incumbents license their AI image to do even short films or whatever it is. Like, how are people going to get in? Like
ChatGPT. My friend, like, for his birthday, I think last year, we were just like having a bunch of us actors. He just like put in like a quick log line on ChatGPT, and it generated in less than a minute like a 4 to 5 page short film.
Wow.
And we were just kind of, and it was good. Like it wasn't bad. Like that was like better than some of the things that
and this is just the beginning.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's really scary. And that's why there was that huge push to like have protections in place for us, because the technology is just getting ahead of us.
Yeah, I think who are we having the conversation with, Arvind, where we were like, I think that in the future there'll have to be like some label that's
like human made. Yeah,
human made.
We were talking with Shruti about book writing in the same way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she was flagging there's some benefits, right? Like to being more accessible. Publishing is more accessible. I could see in filming, maybe set creation or something. Mm-hmm. There's some way to make lower budget but high impact.
Or even
films.
like she was saying the editing of books. It's like the process is so if it's such a manual process, you can make that process a lot faster. Yeah. With AI. But then I think the term that she used was like human creativity or AI creativity, right? Like she was very uncomfortable with AI taking over the creative aspects of things, but it's great for streamlining some of the more downstream of the creative work. There's a bunch of production or other work that even us, like when we use editing software to do the podcast, that makes it really, really easy to do captions and like really, really easy to do things. And so it's just like there's some downstream benefits, but then our podcasts of the future are just going to be like some animated head with like the voice of Joe Rogan or something.
You have to regulate it to a point of like, and it's so hard to do that in the creative world.
Yeah. And what do we lose? That's the thing. I feel like we slowly lose this true creativity, and it's being backfilled by, I don't know, this like augmented artificial creativity, and it's maybe 90 whatever percent, but it's not. And then slowly the people who should be getting better and opened into that don't get in. And then it's like it's almost like wiping out a generation,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's hard to rebuild after that.
I also just, I don't, at the end of the day, I don't think someone's like own personal story and experience and creation of that, you can't, it's, I feel like there's no way to not feel the effects of something artificial. Like, even as successful as it is, like, it's kind of drawing on what already exists, and like, it's not, there's no newness,
Yeah.
there's no authenticity to it in a way. And I don't think that like, I think human beings are capable of feeling that, and understanding that
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
there's
And I
something
think
that's not right
like
or missing,
the
or
same way, people are like, oh, I want to buy like American made something versus buy like something made somewhere else. The same way, like I want to consume human created things,
yeah,
not AI created things. Like
yeah,
generally, I think that's true.
yeah,
Outside of, maybe there's some small, things here and there that it could be fine to let AI do. But like in terms of just like written books, like movies, I guess we do. I mean, with the kids, they watch Pixar movies, which is like it's human
yeah,
created, but it's all like computer generated. So
yeah.
it's, and in a weird way, it's a kind of a in between. But
But it's
um,
still, but there's like human voices behind, like, it's
yeah,
still
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
it's still man-made, it's not completely this artificially created thing.
yeah, exactly. Which is like, you know, I think like the optimists in the world are like, oh, we'll just move towards this world where we're just creating things for each other and we figure out the money problem somehow.
Yeah,
Um, but like, there's like a lot of, the downside is like, what if the optimists are wrong, right? Like, what if there's actually a really, really negative impact, which is probably more likely
yeah,
than something super like, I don't know. How do you even grapple with that? It's kind of a tough,
yeah. I don't. How is it sustainable? I don't know. It's,
yeah.
I like, how is it? It's, I mean, yeah. I guess talking really like dark, deep, dystopian, futuristic. Like, we'll just be annihilated, and like all of us. They'll
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Like,
It's gonna be I'm just kidding. It's gonna be the Matrix again. I mean,
yeah.
but I guess to switch gears a little bit, we've already talked a little bit about living in LA, artistic center,
Mhm.
a place where people are all hustling, people are all grinding, and you would think that a lot of that came to a grinding halt like a couple of weeks ago. So what was your experience with the fires, and how did you hear about what was going on? Were you did were was it near you where you were staying or anything like just tell us a little bit about the story and how things transpired from the perspective of someone from an
Totally.
Angelino.
Totally. So I Tuesday morning is kind of when is when it started. I Normal day, nothing, no one knew, there wasn't anything. There was a Palisades fire. That's all we knew.
Yeah.
I was like driving to, I like, I'm a footwear fit model. It's like one of my side jobs. So I'm like driving to go to my fitting, which is like an hour. It's like downtown. And as I'm driving, I see just this I just see this, like, it really looked apocalyptic, like just this smoke coming out of the mountains and the Palisades in the air. And I still didn't really, I was like, oh, there must have been a fire, like maybe it's under control. Like, no one, like, I didn't, nothing going off on my phone, no one worried about anything. But I go downtown, no one there really knows about it, but they were mentioning, oh, like, I heard there was, there's a fire. So like, people are starting to kind of talk a little bit. And we knew that there were winds, the Santa Ana winds, like we were getting, the weather report and like warnings of just like really high winds that were going to be happening all of last week. So, and brush fires happen, and no one just knew the scale of what it was until later. I have a bunch of friends and one of my best friends, actually, they don't live there anymore, but like the house that she grew up in the Palisades, which is now completely burnt to the ground, and the high school that she went to, which is completely burnt to the ground, she started, texting all of us like, this is really bad. This is really serious. All my friends have to evacuate. We don't know what's going on. And then, then I start downloading the Watch Duty app, and I start getting on it. This is like about Tuesday evening now. And I'm seeing that these fires are getting like really bad. And they're having people evacuate. Luckily, I'm in South Santa Monica, which is on the other side of the 10. And this was happening a little closer to the Palace. This was in the Palisades, and it was North Santa Monica that they drew the evacuation line. I was still in kind of a red zone. So I was just like thinking about, okay, if I have to evacuate, like, what am I going to take? Where am I going to go? You know, I have family down south. I have a bunch of friends that live like further south that I could go stay with. And then it just like domino, like it was just like the how quickly it was just a complete disaster. I still I still can't process like how it went, like in just a few hours, at like from like 9 or 10 p.m. to like 1 a.m. It was just like we were getting notified that this fire is spreading. It's like out of control. There's not enough people to help. Like people just leave. Everyone's texting everyone. All my friends start texting me, and my family friends start texting me. It's all over the news. Obviously, the media tends to hype things up, but for the first time ever, I was like, the news, and as dramatic as it is really accurate. Like, this is actually like a really scary situation. Everyone's freaking out. Like, we have to figure out a way to evacuate. So we're just like making sure everyone's safe and things like that. Next morning, we just find out that the entire Pacific Palisades is burnt to the ground, and sections of Malibu, and the Eaton fires, which were happening in Altadena, also just destroyed, can't remember off the top of my head how many acres, but just like the entire populations and cities are just completely devastated and burnt to the ground. So that was traumatic, obviously. Luckily, like, I didn't end up having to evacuate. I didn't get the go. I was still red flagged for a while, but you know, things started coming, like work got like everyone started, like things got canceled. Everyone was just kind of processing. We find out kind of like, you know, slowly that the LAFD is super underfunded and there's not enough of them, and that we need as much help as we possibly can get. And these fires are at 0% containment. So everyone's just kind of on alert. People who are leaving and doing what they can. People who can't leave are just staying and kind of hoping for the best. So it was a really, really dark situation. Like, there was nothing really that you could do in that moment to help people, or things that you could do. The air quality was so bad you couldn't even be outside. I remember waking up that morning the next day, and the air quality index was like 220 or something. And even anything past 100 is bad. And it was like at 2. And I'm also really close to that fire, so couldn't really leave either.
How far was it from you, the fire?
Palisades, it's probably like 4 to 5 miles.
Oh, no, the one that was close to you.
Yeah, like 4.
Okay.
Like 4.
That's so close.
Yeah,
oh
that
my
is really
god.
Close, yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
So right now, if you go outside, like, and you go that direction, what happens? Do you just hit like a roadblock, basically, where they've just drawn the perimeter?
Even right now, the PCH access. So basically, like, there's North Santa Monica, South Santa Monica, and the 10 is right in between. So the 10 curves around and goes north up, and that's PCH. So that was completely shut down. A bunch of road closures past a certain point, past Wilshire. That's like kind of where it was, where they were telling people to evacuate. So anything north of that. So I was just like avoiding kind of going north at all, but I could still access the 10 and go east, and go south. But going north, yeah, you just completely, it was just not, like, they were barely there. And they also just like, traffic's already bad in LA. And so just like monitoring that, and like making sure that also these people that like whose houses burned down, who wanted to go back and see if they can even get anything, like they were trying to like figure out how to get them through, but not. So it was chaos. And I, you know, and because it's just so bad outside, and to be outside was so bad, I was just kind of avoiding the whole thing. But in light of all of this, though, the community here has just been, it's incredible. Like, LA is it's filled with so many different types of people that are that care about the community so much, like no matter what you do. And like all these artists too that like want to help each other, and like, and everyone from every walk of life was like just so ready to come together and try and help with what was going on. So then immediately, like, you can see the next day there were you know, a lot of these a lot of stores, a lot of shelters being opened for people displaced, a lot of community coming together, bringing donations, bringing essential supplies. So that kind of took over almost immediately. And within 2 days, a lot of these donation hubs were just filled like to the brim, like too much so that they actually had to like stop taking donations. So that was huge. It was kind of like this, in this helpless kind of state, people wanted to do something, the people that were not directly affected and still here. And you could see that, and you could see kind of how strong this city is when it comes to helping people out. And like, you know, like it, like you realize really like what this city is, the people that the city is made of. And that was huge. I'm currently also, one of my really good friends, he's an actor. He started this group chat essentially where on WhatsApp. He started probably like really small, and it's now up to like 500 volunteers to help with transportation, help with at certain donation hubs, like moving donations to getting them to particular families. There's this organization that's been created that's now pairing you with a particular family if you want to help them. So I'm like being paired currently. This happened literally last night. I'm being paired with this family who can text me directly, and if they need anything brought to that, it's like, because you know it's such a large scale like nothing like this has ever happened in LA or you know anywhere kind of. It's just like it's the amount of people that have been displaced is just like unfathomable. So it's just kind of like people are slowly trying to organize efforts to try and you know mediate the situation and help people out. But it's
And
still
we're
an
like,
ongoing.
yeah, and we're like, I guess we're 14 days hence the start of the fires, which was on Jan 7th is when they started.
Yeah,
I think they're still not 100% all
they're not.
contained.
They're not.
Okay.
The smaller fires that broke out were contained. There was this fire in Hollywood that was really, because that's the population there is just it. That was this one of the scarier ones, the Sunset Fire. But they were able to. Luckily, that was like happened a few days in. They already had, you know, they were more prepared after the first two breakouts of the Palisades fires with firefighters, and we had firefighters from Mexico and Canada come in, so we had like a lot more help there. So they were able to put that one out. But the Palisades, every day the percentage is going up for containment, but they're not 100% contained. So
Yeah, you
Yeah.
mentioned like the underfunding of the LAFD.
mm-hmm.
Is there a lot of anger in the community there around how the response was, or is it like nature is kind of getting to the point where it's uncontainable?
Oh, there's a lot of anger. A lot of it is directed at Karen Bass.
Mhm.
And it's not fully, I guess, like it's so easy to kind of put it on her because she just came in and you know she's the new mayor and this is just happening. And a lot of the funds were taken out of the LAFD and put towards put into I don't know, like the police department, like trying to social reform, I guess, is what they were allocated for. But we not real without really that many specifics. But like the fire department has already been like for the city as big as Los Angeles, like it's been understaffed and underfunded for like years and years and years, and no one has been doing anything about that. And if you just compare the amount of firefighters, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but the ratio of firefighters per like 1,000 people or per basically we're so short staffed on firefighters. Like there's just not even for not a natural disaster like this or a wildfire like this, like even for like just basic community necessities on a daily basis, like there are not enough firefighters. The whole LAFD, like they don't even have basic resources for themselves, like that are good enough, like in their department. And you know these fire stations are just like they don't have enough food or water sometimes, like it's so bad and it's just not being addressed, it's being ignored. So that was also a huge part of kind of raising awareness about LAFD and like how much support these, like not just these families that have been displaced, but these firefighters need like the most support. They already haven't been getting it. They haven't been getting the supplies they needed for years and years and years. Like they don't have anything to, like they can only do so much with what they're given. So it's just kind of like I highly like would encourage donating to firefighters specifically, when it comes to, because that's another thing where it's just like there's so much money that's being lost. The economy is so screwed, like, and people are also like who want to help don't know like where to help or where to put their money. So I always kind of encourage people to help the firefighters out, because it's been a mess here for like decades. It's been so long and no one's done anything about it.
Do you think they'll rebuild? Is that the goal? Like, are the communities already coming together to work towards rebuilding? Do you think they're going to try to move people to less fire prone areas? Like, what happens next?
Yeah, I think there's so much to address. I definitely rebuilding is, I think, at the forefront. I mean, there's only so many places people can go. So I don't really know how that would work. I remember I saw this video that this real estate agent had made about how if you don't need to work in LA and you work from home, like please move, like please get out of here, because there's so many people that
Mm.
are not going to have a place to live or a home. Like it's still way too early to kind of say what the game plan is for that. I think they're still just kind of working on making sure that the people who are displaced are housed currently somewhere. And these insurance agencies too, like totally screwed over a lot. I don't know if you guys heard, but a lot of these insurance companies canceled these policies, which led to these conspiracy theories too, which I think are a little ridiculous. But like these insurance companies canceled policies like just like months before this fire happened, which is really sketch and
I think
weird.
it's because it was a high. They knew that the risk was really high because of the how dry it was and the Santa Ana winds and whatnot. Certain areas, they stopped covering after the policies ran out or whatever.
Right.
And they're not covering, even up here in Northern California. A lot of homes here are not getting coverage. I think in Southern California, it's going to become super hard. Like, that's the one really difficult thing. This could shut down the housing market across the state.
Yeah.
If you can't get insurance, then banks won't lend because they're now on the hook. So then I think it's going to be tough. I think rebuilding in those specific areas, I'd be really surprised I'd be not surprised. I'd be concerned about how insurance is going to work.
Yeah.
And so,
and a lot of apparently it's like, there could be more ways to try and fireproof your house. Like there was some success with some people who completely hosed down their house. They put like they took certain steps to try and deflect the fires, and it kind of worked. Like I feel like there are ways to prioritize doing that. Like that wasn't ever a priority. I think everyone just kind of assumed that it wouldn't happen to them, and like people, it just was an issue.
And
that
also, it was kind of sad to see because there was this one guy who had done that, and then like his house is the only house standing.
Yeah,
it's like, what's the point of that?
Like what's he gonna do?
Yeah.
Just go back to his house through this neighborhood, and like it's gonna be so sad.
Yeah.
Oh man,
it's pretty brutal. I know we've been going over a little bit. Are you guys okay on time?
Yeah, I don't have anything to do, so until later.
So, yeah, I mean, I saw some of the stuff you were posting on Instagram, and recognize that you were helping out with the efforts, and kudos to you and everyone else in the community who's been sort of galvanized to action here. And it's going to be, we're going to see in the following months and years what the fallout of a lot of this is, but at least it's the human decency and ability to kind of rely on your neighbor in some ways.
Totally.
That at least has shown through. So
yeah, it's really this WhatsApp group that's now like that I still keep on getting constant, like just people are constantly, communicating about how to help and in what way. Like it's so amazing to see that, and to be a part of that too. And so I guess it's just encouraging more and more people to do that. It's like the only way with something as large scale as this, and with the amount of people that are displaced and affected, it becomes up to the community. It's like community over government. Community works harder and faster and gets things done on a day-to-day basis that, you know, the government cannot. So it's kind of just understanding that and being motivated by that, is what currently is what's going to be the most effective. And like in the long run, it's hard to say what these communities are going to do and how they're going to come back, but it's definitely not going to be the same. And things and LAFD things need to really change to avoid this in the future.
And I'm sure there's a lot of anger and frustration with whoever it is, the powers that be, and also just I think a lot of, I mean, for me, the first, this may have been the wrong reaction, but my first reaction when I heard about this and saw the devastation that was happening, my first reaction went to like, these extreme weather events are just going to continue and they're going to exacerbate and get worse over time if we don't do something about the climate. You know, of course, that's a little bit of a tone deaf first thought, because, you know, there's people on the ground that need help, and there's other things that you could do to help more immediately.
No, but that's valid from like from a large scale kind of perspective, understanding how, you know, this is going to affect the world in the future. Like, it's just like looking at it on a bigger scale. I think it's absolutely valid.
Do you think like, I mean, there's got to be some contribution or some help coming from the movie, you know, production industry, or whatever you want to call it, the entertainment industry that's so prevalent in LA. Like, that could come in the form of, you know, exposure, and, you know, Hollywood has a huge megaphone to the world. It could also come in other forms. Like, what do you think? You know, in your industry, like, what do you think? What would you like to see out of Hollywood?
So we also, a lot of us have been pushing and encouraging for productions to come back to LA. It's been at an all-time low. Last year was probably, in my also limited experience, but in all my years of being here, the slowest I've ever seen it. Again, it was just kind of the lags from the strike and getting things back, you know, getting things going again, and the other strikes that happened last year too that slowed things down. So we're just like desperate for getting back on track, you know, aside from just the fires themselves. But I think that that's also the reason why people should bring back work here, so that we can be able to do the things that we need to do for this large scale event that just happened. Like,
and when there is a slowdown like that, like, you know, you're someone that's part of the industry that, you know, you were mentioning earlier, you have this side hustle where you're, you know, modeling fitness stuff or something like that. What do you do day to day? Like, when things are kind of slow in your industry, like, how do you pull through?
So a lot of the work that I do, which, and a lot of actors, musicians, and artists also do this kind of work, is it's just like gig economy, event based work. It's like what I spent a lot of last year doing. I got into bartending last year, which has been really, really fun and cool. But I'm like a brand ambassador. I do promotional modeling. I do fit modeling and things like that. And it's a little more flexible. It's gig based. So that way, when you're not working on a project or you're not on a set, you have these things to kind of fall back on. And you're not committed to them every week. It's just it's like gig to gig. So you commit based on that. And there's a lot of that in LA. And the nature of this whole city too is it's a bunch of people that are doing a bunch of different things, which is really neat and really cool. So it's just, again, it's just, that's the other thing. And that's why I think our community is so strong, and why community here is so important, is because we all really kind of rely and depend on each other for work, and to be able to do the things that we want to do, when we're not, you know, when we have work and when we don't have work. So it's just kind of a matter of keeping like really strong connections, being connected in a lot of different places, and being able to like find and procure work, and from an artistic standpoint, just like creating your own work and stuff like that is really important to keep you consistently doing what you need to be doing.
Anything you're in that's coming out soon that you want to tell people about, or
Not yet, not really now, not yet. I'm like slowly getting back in it. I just read for a sci-fi feature film. Yeah, it's like a very futuristic, interplanetary kind of dark, a little bit dystopian, but it has a positive ending. Just not to spoil it or anything, but like
we
Now
don't
we
even
heard
know
it
what
here
it is.
first.
Yeah.
The positive ending.
Great. I got my. I'm like dipping my toe. I have a bunch of things that are like in the works,
But there's no drug addicts in this space
no,
themed
not
futuristic
yet.
movie. Okay,
Unfortunately,
we got to get some Venn diagram movie going.
for sure. I wanna really explore that.
Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. You should come back on whenever the movie releases or whenever something you want to highlight releases. But
Summer of Violence did come out. I haven't really been
Say the name again.
Summer of Violence.
Summer of Violence. Oh yeah. We talked about
this. It's now available on Prime and Apple TV. The strikes, it took a while for it to. We shot it back in 2022, but things like the industry, of course, things got delayed. But now it's finally out and available to the public. It's about gang violence in Colorado in the early 90s. It's like loosely based on the writer-director's life. She experienced a lot of that when she lived in Denver back in the early 90s. That is the film. And it did really well at film festivals in 2023 and 24.
Yeah.
So we're excited that it's finally out there for people to see. It's just a heads up. It gets pretty dark. It's pretty racy, so it's a lot going on.
That seems to be a theme, but you like that. That's sort of your theme a little bit.
It's been, well, in this film, I'm like the lighter moments in this film.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I want the heavy stuff now for myself.
Yeah.
But this film gets into that, but not so much with me. But
give us your best like heavy self. What does that look like?
Heavy self.
I don't know. I did this to Arvind earlier. I was like, "Give me your Pepto-Bismol look."
Probably like honestly, like as soon as I hang up this call, I'm gonna like retreat to my shit life. Like gotta get back to doing what I need to do. I need something more specific. Give me something specific.
Let's hear. Let's see. You're just like a 10-year-old and you just bought ice cream and it fell on the ground.
No.
So good.
Oh my God. Good. I just had some personal trauma with my daughter.
Yeah. But by the way, both of us
would definitely have gone all out more if I was willing to break something in my. But yeah, it's a big deal at that age,
That was really good.
I'm really sorry. That was awesome. I do have to drop. I just got a call for.
All right. Well,
but hey, it's been so fun talking to you.
This is so much. This is so great.
Thank you so much. It was good catching up.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.
And when you're back in the Bay, let us know. Drinks on us. Yeah.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
You guys.
Bye.
Take care.